Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Austine's special meeting and work session for August 7th, 2018. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Councilmember Dettori?
Present.
Councilmember Shaw? Here. Councilmember Feldman? Councilmember Wiltshire? It's not here. And Supervisor Levenberg?
Okay, so we're starting off with public hearings in the matter of local law number 4, regulating use of leaf blowers. Is there anybody here to address the board on the local law that is a draft of which has been posted on our website? Just to let you know, we had a resolution on the 26th of June calling for a public hearing on the 10th of July, which is when our first public hearing was opened. It was reopened on the 24th of July, and then we plan to reopen it again tonight, and we are going to probably continue to keep it open because we've not yet heard from the Environmental Advisory Committee. So we're waiting to hear back from them. We have gotten some comments already, which we have entered into the public hearing record. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And we will continue to keep that open unless anybody at the board, any members of the board have any comments tonight about leaf blower. And if there's nobody else here, is there anybody else here to address the board on the leaf blower legislation?
If I could just speak to it quickly. At the last public hearing, the board had asked me to expand my search beyond we looked kind of narrowly at some codes that had been first brought to our attention, and then some that we thought were areas that were economically comparable to Ossining, but without getting the guidance that the board was looking for, I did go broader. But now it's kind of a deluge of information because there are, as supervisors mentioned, many municipalities that regulate this in a variety of different ways. So instead of me just picking and choosing what I think would be preferable to the board, I thought maybe preparing a chart would be helpful. Then you could see how different municipalities handle different aspects of it and whether they actually choose to regulate certain aspects of it. Some allow for emergency exemptions, some allow people to get permits, some have environmental regulations. So it may be useful to this board, especially I saw a lot of the river towns, Irvington, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow. So I could prepare that. If I'm not sure if there is going to be a work session the third week, Maddie?
I don't think we've discussed it yet.
Yeah, we haven't discussed it, but I anticipate that we probably will have a work session then.
Okay, but so just I could try to put that together for the board so that it may be a more productive conversation at a work session to kind of have that information in front of you. And then instead of me just kind of, discerning what I think may be good for the community, you guys can actually look at what your options are, or you may see combinations that you think are helpful or things you don't like. And then it may be a more productive jumping off point going forward.
And it seems to me like the main things are some communities regulate all leaf blowers, some just regulate gas-powered leaf blowers. Some start earlier in the year after leaf season and collection is basically ended and go through the summer months until it starts up again. Some of them are longer, some May, some start in June. Then some of them,
I think whether municipalities were exempt was another issue the board was looking at.
right, exempt themselves or exempt them. Then there's the certain acreage that's
Right.
Included or not included, and how many leaf blowers could be going at the same time.
Right.
And those are some of the variety of issues, all of which are basically to protect the noise and livelihood of people enjoying their afternoons usually or mornings, and a lot of them also have to do with the noise or, you know, the noise codes, that jive with that. And, so as well as the environment and the disturbance to the environment, from not only the powerful jets of the leaf blowers on the ground, but also the, the emissions from the fuel that's used.
And some of the codes do dictate, do reference EPA guidelines, so that may be something that the board wants to consider. There are also some that regulate decibel levels. Another thing that's been discussed, obviously, that I saw, a lot of what I saw was a June 1st start date, which I think is something this board had already kind of come to an agreement on, May 31st, June 1st, somewhere around there. There were also different variations on the residential exemptions for single family. I saw up to 3 family properties, not necessarily based on acreage, which was something that this board was originally considering because that was the way it was originally drafted. So, yeah, I think overall there aren't a plethora of types of regulations, but like the ones you just mentioned, there's probably 5 or 6 big ones that municipalities either include or don't include or handle in different ways. And so I just thought it might be beneficial to the board to just see that on a sheet of paper.
Right. Okay, I think that would be really helpful.
And I think that'd be helpful.
So we're in a public hearing right now. So if you'd like to address the board, just please come up to the microphone, state your name, your address, and what you'd like to enter into the part of the public hearing.
So Kim Jeffrey, 100B Morningside Drive. I thank the board for taking this issue up. It's probably something people talk about or think about often, but don't, it's not on the top 10 until you say it. I admit I didn't get a chance to read this one. So our start times, not in terms of months, but in terms of day or weekend determination, is that part of this or a thought process in this? Because I know I have woken up many a time on a Sunday morning to that sound, and it definitely is disturbing.
There are actually regulations already in the code for noise. So a lot of our noise ordinance addresses some of that. But I don't know that, I can't remember right now. I mean, I actually have it here in front of
It
me.
does. There's times of
There's
days and
something
days
times
of
of
the
day
week.
as well. Yeah.
Okay, I only ask because the reality of the fact is nobody's going to be calling the police with a decibel meter to come to their next door neighbor on a Sunday morning at 8 in the morning to check. It's just not happening. So I guess the question is, how do we, if there's a conversation about start times being a little bit later on a Sunday, maybe not. I think you could
that's
start,
already in the code.
well,
by
construction can start, I think I don't remember.
Sunday?
On a weekday, I think
Sure is. It
construction
says
can start
its
at
leaf blowers
7.
can be operated during the following dates and times: Monday through Friday, including federal holidays between 8 a.m. and 5:30 p.m.
Uh-huh.
Saturday between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Sunday and federal holidays between 10 a.m. and
Okay.
5 p.m.
I mean, that would be helpful if that's something that you guys take up. Thank you.
So I guess then if the board we don't have to do a resolution or anything in terms of a work session. I was just asking Maddie in terms of scheduling, but I guess if August 28th.
Yeah, I guess we'll do the work session on the 21st, and then we'll have a meeting scheduled on the 28th, if that's what works for everyone here.
Right. So at this point, that's probably what
Well, even if the work session doesn't happen, you just have to continue the public hearing to a date certain. And then if we're just still in a holding pattern because the board hasn't had an opportunity to hold a work session yet, then there's nothing wrong with that. So that's why, the work session doesn't have to be scheduled right now. It's just a matter of adjourning the public hearing to a date certain, which at this point I would imagine, based upon what Maddie just said, would be August 28th.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing to August 28th?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right.
You guys have a lot of work to do tonight, you two.
Okay, so next up, we have local law number 5 of 2018, changes to the accessory apartment regulations within the unincorporated town. Just to remind everybody, we had a resolution on July 10th calling for public hearing on the 24th. We opened the public hearing on July 24th and planned to reopen it this evening. And we don't have any intentions of closing it if we continue to hear from the public. And we have gotten some comments already. And this evening, do you want to talk first, or do you want me to open it to the public first? Okay, so we'll open it to the public if there's anybody here to comment on the proposed changes to the accessory apartment regulations. Oh, good evening. Long time no see.
In case anybody forgot, Kim Jeffrey for 100B Morningside Drive. So I'm not sure where this came from in terms of picking this up again, but this has been a conversation over years, right? So about 5 years ago, this came up, and the unincorporated town at the time was not very much in favor for it, and it had come up before. And I think my concerns personally are not necessarily for accessory apartments allowed in the household, although I have some questions on that too. I may be reading it wrong. I completely am willing to be corrected on any false assumptions. I did read it. I may not have understood it all. It seems like this, in terms of change, would be an as of right, and that as long as it's not, okay. So what I guess my questions are, to clarify so that you guys can answer, is are there lot size restrictions with respect to separate building? Is there a lot size restriction with, I understand it said 300 to 800 square feet, couldn't be bigger than that. But my question is the lot size, so can any single family home build a separate structure on their property that is within the limits of square footage to have an accessory apartment? That would be one question. The second question is there any restriction as to who can live in these accessory apartments? Because we are in this whole conversation about the population of our town, schools, all kinds of things. So while I know that there is a conversation about parents coming back and taking care of parents, there might be a conversation about your grown children coming back from college. Not everybody gets a job right away. We know this. So I could see exactly why there would be some, want for some of this. But in the bigger picture, I'm just wondering what the percentage of that is versus what could happen if anybody who's looking to try to offset their income is then able to build a 1 or 2 bedroom in their basement with permits. With permits, I understand you have to get a CO, you have to have the square footage, whatever, but we have a lot of houses in the unincorporated town that would be able to probably do that. And then this whole issue with separate structures. So I just have some questions, and maybe you guys can speak to some of that. And I'm also concerned about the fact that the timing of this conversation is during the summer, when there are a lot of people who are gone and don't necessarily know that this is happening. I happened to mention that I was going to a meeting tonight, and 3 people said to me, why are they doing that? 2 of them lived in the unincorporated town, 1 lived in the village. So I know I know you announced it. I know that you're doing exactly what you need to do, but I'm just saying this time of year, in terms of something that is something the unincorporated town has previously and may still be very interested in, is just a difficult time.
Since we happen to have our planner here who put together this draft, David Stolman. David, do you want to talk about any of the questions? We don't usually answer questions, but just because we have you here this evening, I thought maybe if you wanted to just address a couple of those issues that were raised, I wouldn't mind if you did. I would love if you could come on up here.
Join us.
Join us.
So asked a number of questions. So the size of the lot, I'm on page 3 of the local law. The size of the lot has to be at least the size required by the zoning district in which the property is located. Going on from that,
There are
Yeah.
minimum lot sizes for every zoning district, and it has to be at least, it has to comply with the lot sizes for the district.
right, it can't be an undersized lot, so.
Okay, so
You can't just build anywhere. That was your question. Can
But
anybody
it would
build
be the
anything?
same
I
as
need-
building an extension. So you have a certain amount of square footage that you're allowed on your lot. So whether it's an accessory apartment, whether you put an extension, it has to be
Garage,
within
whatever.
that square footage that you're allowed for structure.
okay, so within, thank you. That's clearer than I
was.
just, maybe I'm obtuse. I'm just saying, I just didn't understand that. Okay.
Okay, so, and then you can't build a garage and immediately get a permit for it, and it's a special permit from the zoning board of appeals, so it's not permitted by right. And you can't just build a garage or an accessory structure and immediately put an accessory apartment in. It says, I'm reading from the local law, an accessory apartment shall only be located in that portion of the building for which there has been a valid CO in place for at least 2 years prior to the application for an accessory apartment. So that was another one of your questions.
And just to build off of that, this is already permitted. This is already in the code for, accessory apartments within an existing structure.
Right.
This is expanding it to detached structures. So your example of a basement, that's already permitted based upon the way the code is currently drafted. These are just amendments to what already exists. And there are also size restrictions on how big the apartment can be. Specifically, not even, I don't believe it's even, is it 2 bedrooms?
It's a maximum of 2 bedrooms, but
But
in
we've-
terms of
we've already
floor
gotten-
area.
Yeah, I mean, we've already gotten feedback from our building department to suggest that we reduce that and maintain that it's 800 square feet, right?
Right, it can't be more than 800 square feet,
Right.
and it can't exceed 33% of the habitable floor area of the principal building on the lot. So if you've got a 3,000 square foot home of habitable space, the accessory apartment roughly can't exceed 1,000 square feet.
Unless
And,
we reduce it to 800 square feet.
oh, I'm sorry, it
800.
is 800 square feet.
Right.
It's the lesser of
Right,
those two.
800 square, it couldn't be 1,000 square feet because we're saying it's 800 square feet.
800 is the
Well,
max.
But it can't be more than 800 square, it can't be it can't be 800 square feet even if the house is 2,200 square feet. For
Right,
example,
it's the lesser of
Right.
800 square feet
or a third
or a third of the
the
habitable floor area of the principal building on the lot.
habitable.
And either the main dwelling or the accessory apartment must be owner occupied as a principal residence.
Owner occupied, which is different than, and I think that was another question that you had in an email, which is that if somebody is not present on the premises, then that's not considered owner occupied. So they would
Gotta
have to
be
be,
their
it can't
principal
be an
dwelling.
absentee landlord, for example. You cannot, as it's currently drafted.
And so I guess my other question was, and we may already have this too. Is the building inspector going to be inspecting, and how are we and
Annually,
annually?
correct.
In the scenario that I provided, in which we do have a number of people who do such things, they have a primary residence here, they live somewhere else during another part of the year.
That they shouldn't legally probably be considering that their primary residence, like they shouldn't be getting star exemption or something like
Well,
that.
they
if
are,
it's-
because they can get it in one place. It's their primary, but they live for 4, 5, 6 winter months, right? 4, 5, 6 snowbirds.
Right.
So I guess the question is, what we're saying is that shouldn't be allowed, except for, I don't know how you're going to know.
Well, the thing is, if it's their
Owner-occupied.
primary, if it's owner occupied, a person has a right to leave and go away if they're owner occupied.
Right.
What they can't do is then necessarily rent out the portion of the house that they're not there for that. I mean, there's probably stipulations on that, so I would think
If
that
not,
you would
we
have.
We can certainly do that.
So it would be the accessory that would maybe be 12 months of the year, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that for 6 months of the year, there's two people living there who don't own the house, or two families, or whatever it is. But you can't, if somebody goes away for a month, that's still
You
their
can't
primary
sublet your house
residence.
and still have an accessory apartment for those 4 months that you're away in Florida.
You can't sublet your house. You may not be there, but you can't sublet your house to somebody else.
Right, but we were also, but if you're talking about I know you're saying these regulations exist, right? So, but you can do these accessory apartments. I guess the question is, you have to be owner occupied. And if you are not there for 4 months, that means you can't have somebody living in the accessory, or you can, because you're going to be back.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
your,
you're on
You
vacation.
can.
you can, because that's your primary,
Yeah.
and but there's something in place, I'm assuming even now, that if you violate, or if you have tenants who are not,
If it comes to the
Act-
building inspector's attention that anything in this code is being violated, he can bring it to the zoning board's attention, at which point the zoning board will hold a public hearing and consider the facts as are specific to that situation, and determine whether the code is being violated such that the special permit should be revoked.
okay, so I guess the bigger question is, if this is already something that we can do, then the difference may be the separate structures.
The difference,
So,
That's the primary difference.
okay,
and the fact that it's in the zoning code.
Instead of
so
a
can we
separate-
talk about that? Because that's opening a whole,
This is a public hearing. You
So
can make
you can
any
talk.
comments that you want. This is not
Okay.
a back and forth, even
Okay.
though we've allowed
Well-
that for this
But
particular.
really, you
clarification.
kind of know the rules.
Yeah,
so.
you do know the rules, so you can make your comments, and we
Okay.
will accept your
So,
comments as part of the
I-
public hearing.
I have concerns with respect to the opening of the ability, even if there are certain provisions within that restrict in terms of lot size, something that's going to be allowed that is different and more than was previously. I will listen to the next work session so that I understand more about exactly what it is. I read it, and I said from the beginning, I don't necessarily understand it all.
Answer your question.
You're not allowed to, I think. I think they said you're not allowed to.
Have our comments.
So, my concern as somebody who lives in the unincorporated town is, what does that do? As much as it is written within the code that the intent is to keep the single family character of the unincorporated town. If my neighbors, as I wrote in the email, to the left, to the right, and in front of me, all have acreage enough that they can put accessory separate structures, then my question is, what do we do about that? Because even saying to the zoning board of appeals that they can stop somebody, at what point do you say, oh, you could and you could, but you can't because now it's too much?
There is, that is in the code, so you
Is
can
in
only
there.
have a certain amount within a certain geographic location, so that you couldn't
It
have
doesn't
every
change the
house that
character
you
of the
do.
neighborhood.
Well,
It's
I think
based
that
on-
maybe there should be, when you guys have your work session, to really talk about it in real brass tacks, because some people like me maybe don't understand it all in terms of real life. It's great to talk about lot sizes. It's great to talk about, square footage, but that doesn't, most people don't think that way. So what we want to know for the most part is, what does that really look like? What does that really mean? Who can really do that? What are the real implications of that? And I'll leave it there. I just think we just need a little more understanding about it.
The zoning board had a meeting last night.
Okay.
And they are the board that is currently charged with granting these permits, and as drafted under the amendments, will still be charged with granting what is now referred to as a special permit. They were overall very happy with it. They thought it was very well drafted. They were happy with both of the primary changes that are incorporated in this, which were just discussed, which are the detached residences, as detached structures, excuse me, as well as the fact that it's now within the purview of the zoning code. They did have one comment that's relatively minor and maybe should be a topic for discussion at the work session, and I submitted a memo to you. I apologize for how late it was. They met last night. So in the purpose of the code provision, which is on page 3, subsection A, it says this section will further the town's goal of providing affordable rental housing in Ossining without changing the low-density, predominantly single-family character of the town. Zoning board was concerned with the term affordable. They understand that there is the potential that an accessory apartment is going to be potentially less costly than a non-accessory apartment, and that this provision does not necessarily include any regulations or requirements, and instead is just kind of an overview of what's being intended, as well as the fact that this is carryover language from what's been in place for a long time, but having had another opportunity to look at it, because the zoning code does regulate affordable housing, and affordable housing does have certain legal implications and connotations, they were concerned with that term and how it could be perceived by renters, property owners, and the public if it suggests that the zoning board has the ability to and or is required to put certain restrictions on income levels and the amount of rent that, based upon the way this is drafted, and I don't think it's the intention to change that, is not what the goal of this is. So it's just that one word, and if there was some way to remove that or reframe it, it's something that they discussed in detail and felt very strongly about, and I promised I would convey it to you.
I'm good with that.
That seems reasonable.
Yep.
That seems reasonable. I think reframing versus just
You could be saying diversity of rental housing.
right, something, right, or helping the
If we say
primary
lower
homeowner,
cost,
something
then
like
the ZBA may still think they have to somehow regulate the rent, but
Correct.
the diversity of housing maybe is the best way.
Okay.
I think they would be happy with that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else here to address the board at this public hearing on changes to accessory apartment regulations within the unincorporated town? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to adjourn this public hearing. If I could have a motion to August 28th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
It's me and Liz.
Left and right.
Pick
all
one.
those- right and left. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so next up, we are opening the public hearing, reopening for local law number 6 of 2018.
No, this
First
is the
time.
first time.
Solar energy. We adopted a resolution on the 24th of July calling for a public hearing. Tonight, and so this is our first night of the public hearing, and we are looking at how we can make it possible for different types of solar installations to exist in the town, and we're trying to make it easier, but also we want to make sure that we have enough regulations in place that we aren't going to have town of Ossining the solar farm. We want to make sure that we have it in, again, I think some of the main issues for us to consider for solar are how many we really want, where we want them to be. Do we want them to be clustered or scattered throughout the town? Are they a good use of undeveloped land? If they're clustered, how close could they be? How much screening should there be? What is the impact to the land? What is the impact, probably positive, to the school district? Most solar farms do have pilots attached to them, so there are tax consequences. And of course, on the upside, it offers us the ability to change the configuration of power that we offer and have potential for community solar. So with that, we had published a draft of the local law. And if anybody is here to comment on that, please come up to the microphone and state your name and where you're from and what your comments are.
We actually had sign-ups this time around, so Annie Klein.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Annie Klein, and I'm an associate at Del Bello, Donnell and Weingarten, Wise and Whitaker, and White Plains. I'm here on behalf of my client, CVE North America. They are an independent producer of renewable energy, and they are active in the solar and biogas markets. With me is Travis Scott. He's the representative of CVE. So we commend you for looking into permitting solar in Ossining. We're really excited to work with you. CVE is actually considering a property in Ossining, 90 Summerstown Road, for development of a potential solar farm, depending on how these regulations go. So we have had an opportunity to review the legislation, and based on my client's experience, we had a few proposed modifications we'd like to discuss with you. Just think that would better balance the industry and the town's interests. So I'd like to let Travis just speak briefly on CVE's model and kind of how they operate their business, just to give you a little background on us.
Thank you.
Sorry. Hello. My name is Travis Scott from CVE Group. Our North American office is based in Manhattan. Right now, we are developing projects in Massachusetts and New York. The projects in Massachusetts are a little further along just because a lot of the communities in there have they've been dealing with the solar issue a little bit longer, and Massachusetts has a statewide law governing how solar is implemented. But here, obviously in Westchester, it's pretty new. That said, we looked at the bylaw you guys created and overwhelmingly approved with almost everything in there, aside from a couple points. One of which is the coverage issue, or I guess building coverage. Typically in Massachusetts, my understanding is as the law is currently written, in certain zones, there would be 20% building coverage allowed for solar installations, which for basically any large scale, I guess in this law, tier 3 solar would just prohibit them from existing. Kind of what we do in Massachusetts is we'll lease, a 100-acre farm, we'll lease 20 acres of it, and then we'll develop that with the farmer, and we'll pay them the whole time. We'll participate in community solar and programs like that. We're trying to do something similar here in New York, but obviously there's not like 100-acre farms here in Westchester. The parcels are a lot smaller. That said, obviously we're still trying to use a smaller portion of large parcels that are here. For example, the one that we're considering in Ossining, I believe, is about 16 acres, and we're hoping to use roughly 9 acres of it for development, which if you're doing a typical building coverage, I think it comes out to like 59%, which sounds massive, but when you actually look at these structures and the way that they are even regulated elsewhere, that comes down to, I believe, like 31%, because it's just measuring the actual ground coverage that the solar panels and the structures create, not the overall total footprint. So that would be my only real comment. I mean, in terms of, the setbacks and whatnot, some the towns we're working with in Massachusetts, they don't even have building coverage. They just do setbacks, and that kind of regulates the size of these enough. But, with your setbacks here, I think it's 100 feet across the board for tier 3, which provides like a ton of room for screening and for other auxiliary things that we need to do with solar panels, like access roads and whatnot. I think the bylaw is pretty great. And yeah, we're developing this site in Ossining. We have a couple other sites that we're developing with other towns in Westchester. So obviously it's a new thing here, but we're hoping to open up a dialogue and work with towns like the town of Ossining.
And so just to be clear, in terms of the coverage issue, you're saying that if you just redefined it to only include the actual square footage, because I did talk to Mark Weingarten in advance of this, and he had mentioned the same issue, having building coverage be more reflective of the ground coverage that it's calculated where the solar panel starts and ends. So it's not the total square footage included in the boundaries, but each panel.
Right, yeah, there's
Right.
strips of open space
Right.
between the rows and the arrays. And so we are just if we exclude those open space areas, then it knocks the coverage down to about 30%. So as part of our proposed modifications that we'd love to work with you on, one of those would be increasing the building coverage. The property we're talking about is in an R40. It has a maximum 18% building coverage. That really doesn't make a solar farm feasible there. So we just, we drafted some language. I'm happy to hand that out to you tonight for you to review. Just basically increasing the maximum building coverage to 35%, and defining that those open space areas are excluded from calculating that building coverage, which would allow something like this to go forward. Yeah, in your code, 30% building coverage is only allowed in the neighborhood commercial, general business, and general business 1 districts, which tier 3 solar systems are not currently proposed to be permitted in. So limiting it to these residential areas with smaller building coverage makes it more difficult to create a solar farm that would be feasible and profitable. So let me hand
Sure.
that out.
Thank you for those comments, and I will just say that we have received a few comments from others in writing, which include suggesting that we allow tier 3 also in our GB zones. So that would potentially be something that we're considering and would change that to a certain extent.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
The only comment I would make is that I think the interpretation is that those aisles would be counted, but in fact, what the proposed local law says is it says the area beneath ground-mounted solar collectors shall be included in calculating maximum permitted impervious surface coverage and building coverage for the applicable zoning district, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not saying right now that the aisles are counted
Right.
for building coverage.
We just
You have to come back up. Sorry.
We understand. We are just concerned that it could be interpreted, and we just wanted to specifically exclude those open space areas because otherwise, if it is interpreted different, that would not make our calculations feasible. So we just wanted to be more specific.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Kathy Hake, sorry.
Hello. So I'm Kathy Hake. I'm with Clean Energy Collective, and we're a developer of community solar. We're actually in partnership with Santa's in here, so we're looking at the same site. I did have a couple comments, and I actually brought a copy that I could give to. I just have like 5 comments on 5 different sections. Regarding the decreasing cost of electricity, I would suggest that you might want to add multifamily complexes and rental properties into your residents that are able to reduce their electricity costs, because solar, community solar, does allow renters and everyone to participate. Anybody who doesn't want panels on their roof, they're able to participate. So you might just add that in. Snow removal, we see that as a big expense. Especially some years, as I'm sure you're aware. The chances of needing emergency equipment on a site in the winter, when there's snow on the ground, there's really nothing there to burn. So the chances of needing a fire truck is extremely slim. Same thing with needing to emergency or ambulance. People, the property is fenced, it's private property. It would be less of a chance of needing that than needing to rescue someone from an open space property. So that might be something that you would consider. It will be a significant cost to maintain those roads clear from snow. Screening, something that we understand is very important to towns and the neighbors, and we are always willing to work with the town and the neighbors. Impervious cover question. So I just wanted to make another comment about that underneath the panels, we plant a low-growing pollinator-friendly mix. So that does absorb rain stormwater. We think of it as your umbrella over your picnic table in the backyard. That panels are not necessarily much larger than that. So the rain does come down around all of them and it spreads out and it is absorbed under the panels as well as along the edge. There's rarely a drip line, in huge storms. There can be some erosion, but if the vegetation is thick and the rain is not incredibly hard, there's rarely a problem there. Just something to think about. Last thing is the town tree law. That is something that could be a big difficulty for a solar farm if we're going to be clearing any trees. Solar farm is environmentally sustainable. The theory is that the solar field will reduce more carbon emissions than is absorbed by a similarly sized forest. So if we think about that, sometimes people say it doesn't make sense to cut down trees to put up a solar farm, but it does reduce more carbon emissions than a forest will absorb. Obviously, we won't be able to plant more trees on the site, and we will be doing a lot of plantings of other bushes. Your tree law does talk about removal of regulated trees may be favored by the approval authority if it will have a positive effect on solar farms or solar access being one of those things. So we're wondering, and also it does talk about the planting of other vegetation, which would be bushes and screening. So maybe that could be have another look. Okay.
We do have a tree bank also. Do you want to comment on that at all?
On the tree bank?
Or
Or any of it.
Well, there's a provision for a tree.
No, on what she was saying.
Not really. I think these are things to be considered. So we're going to have a work session to talk about all this stuff. But the town, in terms of tree replacement, the town has provision for a tree bank and a tree bank fund. So planting trees elsewhere or putting money into a fund, which would be exclusively for the replanting of trees.
And I assume that would be a planning board decision at that point when it got to there, where they would say, yes,
planning
you
board,
need
yes.
to make, this is the mix that we would see you would need to make. So I guess we could be a little bit more explicit potentially in the solar code to make it easier for that decision to be made potentially.
It would be nice to say something to the effect of the planning board has the ability to ease the requirements of the tree law or something similar to that.
If they see other
If they feel it's appropriate, right?
potential benefits to the environment, something like that. Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you very much. Is there anybody else here to address the board on the potential solar energy draft? Did you want to come? No.
No, we're not here for that. Say, thanks for doing that. We'll be watching to
So I'm losing my touch because I had no idea that the big conversation about this had to do with solar farms. I thought this had to do with the fact that more people were doing solar and this is more individualized and that there might be a residential person who wanted to put up a solar panel and maybe we wanted to take a look at what happens if different people wanted to populate what that would look like. I had no idea that this was business. So that brings up a whole lot of other questions I have. So tier 3, I guess I have questions about what that really looks like, and I'm sure a lot of other people would too. Are those the tall ones? Are those the single standing ones? I don't know that we all understand. I'm just going to bring up the things that could be cleared up for some of us who so what is the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 in respect to height, size, and what that looks like?
I mean, all those things are articulated in the draft, in the definition section. So, I mean, I just would refer you to.
You might, but I also read it and had trouble. And so one of the wonderful things about work sessions is that you guys get to answer questions that the population has. So these are my questions that can't be answered now, but I will listen to the work session since if it's going to be on the 28th, I won't be here, but we can do YouTube. The sizing of the structures, the buffering of the structures, how many. So if we're now going to allow possibilities of solar farms on particular acreage and whatever that coverage may or may not look like, how many of those can be. So if 90 Somerstown Road, and I can see the benefit. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying then there are unintended consequences. So if 90 has it and then 92 decides to sell and there's another 16 and then, you know, the other side, how, you know, where does the regulation happen so that okay, now we've put these restrictions of lot sizes, but have we put restrictions back to the accessory housing thing? Like when is too much? Even if we put in certain requirements, how are we going to hold ourselves and not completely change everything all at one time? I mean, I know we need to keep going and that solar's great and people like accessory apartments, but this is a lot of change in a potential short amount of time. And I just urge the town to be very cautious about the possibility of what this looks like in 30 or 50 years, because this is often what happens is that decisions are made and then, you know, the boards from 50 years from now go, why did that happen? So I just would appreciate a little bit more clarity in the work session about what those things really look like, real world conversations about what the restrictions are on buffers, what the setbacks are really, and how many can really be near each other if you have all kinds of lots. Thank you.
I would just like to say that I think that it is actually written in a fairly easy to read way, and so I would just suggest that you do take a look again, because it is detailed at what some of the descriptions are and the definitions. You know, we certainly can talk about it again at the work session. David, I just want to ask you if there's any little highlights that you want to mention in response to any of those questions, because as I stated at the beginning, I think, you know, all of these are the areas that we need to focus on, and why we're here, putting something in place so that we can make sure that A, we make it easier for the zoning board to make a determination, and also B, that we are clearly demarcating where, how many, and what's too much.
And mitigating the unintended consequences.
Exactly.
That's really the purpose of the work session, so, and the public hearing, so.
Not changing the feel of our community.
The work sessions are televised, right?
Yes.
So when we went over all of this, it was televised at a work session, and we went over everything that Kim is talking about, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll probably do it to some extent again.
Right.
I guess there have been precious few comments at this public hearing tonight about the local law. I would just say, you know, come to the next work session and watch the next work session.
And also you took for like a basis of this, were you not working with the suggested uniform solar
right,
code?
The model solar law. And as a matter of fact, if you look at and I went to a whole variety of solar laws here in Westchester County that other communities have, and they're based upon an older version.
Right.
They're different. They're very different.
Right.
Based upon an older version of the model local law.
Right.
So this is based upon, and I couldn't come across any other local legislation that is based upon the new model
This
regulations.
is pretty new. I think that
Yes.
it's come out within the last, I don't know, month or two. I'm looking at Sustainable Westchester folks back there. No?
A little
Okay,
bit longer.
a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we probably had this discussion at work session.
But Austin, town of Austin could be the first using I'm not sure, but
Right,
could
the
be
new.
the first using the new model regulations.
And the new model regulations are, I think, based on feedback, and I'm guessing that they've received both from developers as well as municipalities where, you know, this is where New York State has actually adopted something new as a model code.
And just to, maybe David could speak to this too, I think part of what brought this about was the building inspector's comments that right now there isn't much in the code or anything that's regulating this. And so, you know, it's an opportunity for the town to look at what is beneficial to the community, what is not, and like Councilwoman DeTore said, to make sure you're looking at what any unintended consequences may be and trying to mitigate those now. But right now you're putting something in place to where it's not like with the accessory law that accessory apartments that already exist and you're making modifications here. You're putting something in place for where there's nothing right now.
No regulation.
Right.
And I think that's a good point because the idea is not. Oh, sorry, I was coughing too much before. The idea is not to be to balance reactivity with proactivity. So while we all know change is hard, we live in a rapidly changing world, and the reality is, as much as we want Ossining to stay the same, nothing ever stays the same. So we have new renewable energy sources that need to be evaluated and how they can best be utilized. The way people live going forward is changing. The cost of living is a national crisis. So ways that we can be proactive in looking at things that actually facilitate our ability to make our community more sustainability, whether it's in terms of housing costs or renewable energy, are really, really important discussions. And for us not to be having those discussions, mostly at the response of a community that's pretty engaged and proactive, would be, you know, it's incumbent on us to do that. So we recognize that there's never a good time, because if not this time, then it's holidays or something else. So there's never really a good time to capture everybody's attention, and not a wide number of people actually watch these meetings regularly, but some do. But we are going to keep the public hearing open because we understand that not everybody's going to be here. So this isn't trying to slip something in. This is really trying to move the needle forward and make sure that we don't miss opportunities to be as efficient and proactive in a positive way as we can be.
And I'm trying to remember, actually, David, you reminded me that we did have that work session already to start talking about this, which was, do we remember the date? Remember the date?
I don't remember the date, but the first draft, or there's only been one draft, is dated May 29th, 2018, so it probably wasn't too far after that.
Yeah, so I think it was, again, it was before school was out, I'm pretty sure.
I want to see June 19th. Because.
All right.
Wow.
She's good. She's good. So anyhow, and then we have already received, you know, we received comments even before, I think, we opened up the public hearing. From community residents and even some folks who were here tonight.
And the
I think
building
we got comments.
inspector.
Our building inspector.
And he made some comments, and I think all of his comments are easily resolvable. And his first sentence is hard for me to believe, but it said, I took a look at the proposed solar panel law that David did such an excellent job on.
Huh.
So,
It's hard for you to believe that?
yes.
Oh, come on.
And one of the comments that John made, and the supervisor mentioned it as well, was including the GB district as the permitted uses, and that was the zoning board's only comment, that they reiterated that they thought that would be a good addition to the code.
Hello.
Dan Walsh, Sustainable Westchester, and it just occurred to me that NYSERDA has a person who is sort of dedicated to helping municipalities with their contemplation of these code issues, and they've been holding workshops around the state, bringing people together to have those discussions, and he has said that he'd make himself available for such things. I think a lot of the focus has been what's that?
I'm pretty sure I signed up for the next one.
Okay.
I think there's one coming up. I'm pretty
Down
sure.
here in Westchester, though?
I think it's not far from
My
here.
point being that
Yeah.
we could instigate that,
Okay.
and they'll do that, I'm sure. And
Wonderful.
I know there's other electeds around that are already concerned about this issue. So it might be very constructive to throw things back and forth with other towns in the interest of thinking sort of a little uniformly about this. I don't know if that's going to sort of match your schedule, but we could probably pull that together pretty quickly. So.
Sounds very helpful. Thank you. All right. So with that, is there anybody else here to address the board on local law number 6 of 2018, solar energy? Going once, going twice. Do I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing to
August 28th.
August 28th?
Second.
I'll take her cough as a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, you gotta go back to that. Okay.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay.
Would you know when you might have a work session on this?
A week from
No,
today.
2
now.
weeks.
Which is,
August
The
20
21st.
21st, sorry. 21st. Okay, so next up, we are going to, do I have to adjourn? Motion to adjourn into work session?
Thanks, David.
So moved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve.
have a good night.
You too. Do I have a second? Did I have a second?
You have a so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, I'm delayed here.
Okay. So, next up, we're talking about our pavilion and park rental fees. Thank you all for your participation in our public hearing this evening. I appreciate it. I'd like to invite our Superintendent of Parks, Bill Garrison, to offer some comparative data and recommendations. As you may recall, we are looking to evaluate some data that we have from the past years. Because in 2017, when we had some new park areas and new parks, park pavilions or rehabilitated park pavilions come on board and then rented. We wanted to see, we changed our fee structure, and we wanted to sort of talk about if it's working or not, if we need to evaluate it again. We also want to talk about noise, how we determine what we would like to allow at the Stage at Angle Park, how we've had some complaints about the fact that we got rid of the not-for-profit versus other people's fees renting our pavilions. So I'm hoping we can have a fruitful discussion that will result in some sort of consensus to either leave things as they are or change them as necessary to keep up with our demanding who wants to rent our spaces. Hello, Bill. Good evening. So I'm going to just let you talk about the suggestions that you have, and
What I just passed out was just a quick comparison of pavilion rentals from neighboring municipalities, including the county pavilions as well, with the Osnene price being at the far right. So we are.
that'll help.
Okay. All right. So with Osney being at the far right, you can see that we are right in there with the pricing is very much comparable to what's going on around us in Osney. One of the things is that we've looked at the revenue over the past few years, and the 2018 revenue for the pavilion rentals is substantially down compared to 2017. So in 2017, it was about $12,300. We're about $6,000 in now. If you kind of prorate that out compared to last year's August to December, would be projected another $2,500. So we'd be about $8,500 compared to $12,300 last year. One of the things that we're hearing is that a lot of people are coming in, and this is just kind of hearsay at the counter, but that we would like to rent the pavilions, but they're too expensive. That's what we're hearing from some residents at the community center when they come in. So it's one thing to consider, is the price for our community too high? Would we have more people utilize the pavilions if the price was lower?
Can I ask a question, just real quick? So I have copies for anybody who needs them of the old pavilion rental application. So that's going back to 2015, and then the 2017 that we've sort of updated. So when you put this chart together, are these, based on like an all-day rental? Like, are any of them, the way that we have it set up currently, which is the 4 hours and then each additional hour is an extra charge? Or is there any sort of differentiation there?
There's
or?
not much. Most of them are a day rental.
Okay, so we're one of the only ones doing it
Yeah,
this way.
and some of them also had additional fees, like you had to pay for parking, which something like with the county, some of the county parks, you have to pay $10 to get in to the park and pay that fee. I think it was
or maybe Sleepy Hollow or Terrytown, it was like a $5 parking fee. So there's additional fees associated with those.
So those additional fees are not considered
not
as
shown
part of
here.
that. So Terrytown's already higher than us, and they have an additional parking fee. You're saying,
Right.
County pavilions are much higher.
And what we had back in 2015 was a sort of a tiered structure based on amount of people expected to show up. And the weekend fee, so Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, was $225 for the whole day. Now it's $225 for 4 hours.
Right. But what we know is nobody's renting it for half a day.
Right. We have not had a multiple rental.
Right. Or that's more to the point. We're not having multiple.
A morning and an afternoon.
Right.
Right.
So I guess the question is, do we just go back to saying $225 for the whole day?
Yep.
Okay, that was easy. All right, done. Next up, we have to vote on. How do we have to deal?
We're
with
gonna
these?
put it on to. Oh,
One of you.
You would just do it by resolution to amend the fee schedule.
Right. Okay. Which I don't think we have on for tonight, but we could throw it on.
No.
We won't do that, but we will put it on for our next special meeting, which I anticipate will happen on potentially the 21st. Well, we know we have to approve vouchers on the 21st, so we're gonna have a special meeting either way. Okay.
Along with that is
Yes.
so the fee schedule has one rate for the rentals. And we get a lot of questions regarding rates for not-for-profits or discounts. So we're looking for direction from the board on that.
And what's your thoughts on that, Bill?
So my thoughts on that are to have one flat rate. It puts us in a very difficult situation of determining who would get a discount, how much of a discount, without having any published rates or approved rates for those entities.
So a flat rate for not-for-profits or a flat rate for everybody? I'm asking.
Well, what do you mean? Who's everybody? Who's not? Who's besides?
meaning no one is excluded from paying this one flat fee, be they nonprofit
Right,
or
I mean,
Liz
me,
Feldman.
you, anybody who wanted to rent it.
A flat rate. Oh, yeah, a flat rate for. I think that's what you're saying. One rate.
I'm saying one rate.
For
Okay, one rate for
any
everybody and every
private or
entity and everybody.
Not-for-profit.
And I don't know, the feeling is that, we're using an IRS distinction to determine who gets a discount or not. And then is that the right thing to do? As being a non-for-profit?
Did you have some comment about the legality of that or something?
Yeah, I know that in some municipalities, council has determined that giving a discount is a gifting of services because it is based on an IRS distinction.
So it's not in compliance with the state comptroller's guidelines. Okay.
Do we have a lower fee? Now it's a flat rate for any time. We used to have a lower fee for weekdays, didn't we?
Yeah, but no longer. Now it's no matter what time of day or whatever you rented, what day of the week, it's still the $225.
Well, does that cover the town's expenses, the $225?
Probably barely. Well, so that's another conversation that we're going to talk about, but let's just
Because I think
Right
that
now,
ties into the
a
gifting
general pavilion rental. Yes, it covers our expenses for a general pavilion rental with nothing added, nothing special. You're renting it for the day, a pavilion for the day. Yes, our expenses are covered.
So I mean, I can understand the issue. One of the things I would want to look at to see if it's gifting of municipal services is if you're lowering it below the level where you're actually providing, you're not covering the costs to the town, and then I mean, I could see that as being a potential distinction. If that's something the board is even interested in looking at. If you're just thinking flat rate across the board, then this is a moot point.
We don't think $225 is a lot of money for a pavilion rental in general. The thing about, not-for-profits, I know, we've certainly been approached by many who say, well, we always receive this discount. And we've also been approached by people who, town or village, who say, I always received a discount, or I didn't have to pay, or this, that, the other thing. I mean, the thing about it is, I think that Bill's point is well taken, is that, who has to make this decision? Who has to make, are we going to have to come back to the board every time somebody comes up and asks for a discount? And I don't think any of us want to be in that situation. I think, again, we're not making money on this. We're covering our expenses and we're offsetting the cost to taxpayers for the upkeep and maintenance of the pavilions over the long haul, right? That's essentially what somebody is paying for. Not-for-profits, just because they're not-for-profits doesn't mean they don't have money coming in. They do. They function, and this would be a piece of something that they have to budget for, just like any other organization or a person who is renting the facility.
What about community groups like Scouts, PBA, Firemen's Picnic?
Just list them all. List
that,
them all down.
Yeah, no, they
And they all have to,
We're the volunteer spirited town, so we have probably more than any other town potentially of those groups, and they all do like to rent our pavilions. So if we make a different rate for all of those groups, then we're essentially keeping somebody else who might be paying the $225 for renting it. Number one, and number two, we're essentially saying that for whatever reason, we have to make a distinction. This group gives us this group gives us that. This, I don't really know, how you determine that. But I'm, we're just happy this is a work session.
yeah, so, I mean, I think that, even if it's not a weekend, which is a prime rental time, that giving our community groups, and we can write out a definition of a community group, at least weekdays, opportunity to rent it.
I kind of disagree because you have a real slippery slope on community group. So dividing that line on who's a community group and who gets a benefit and who doesn't is going to be very, very, very difficult. And I think the best way to keep it affordable and to make sure that the costs are covered is a blanket rate. The way you can keep the rate the lowest is make sure everybody pays the same rate. So that's going to give you the lowest possible rate because you're not asking somebody else to subsidize it. And I just don't think that it's reasonable for, you're asking people to really cover the sanitation, the maintenance of the park. So
I mean,
Maybe-
people
maybe
use
the
the parks all
balance-
day long for free, and we pick up the garbage. I mean,
but
that's part of our
it's
services
very,
to the
very
people.
specific to a party or to a larger event where you want to have, when you go to the park, if you want to do something at the park and there's a concert that night, you may or may not be able to do what you had planned to do. When you're reserving, you're paying a premium so that you have a dedicated space that you want. So that's what you're paying for. When you just go to the park, there's no guarantee of that.
Here's a suggestion. I'm going to go back to the consideration of making the weekday a little bit less expensive. We're, again, we're not bringing somebody in necessarily.
additionally,
The
at a higher
something
rate.
can be dealt with, and it might be incentive for us to rent the pavilions then during the week, whereas right now there isn't any. So maybe what we say is it's $175 for weekday, not
Monday
including
through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday.
You get a
Yeah.
But then it's across the board because that would also make it more affordable for
Exactly.
somebody who maybe wasn't going to rent it, but now would do it because they have an option to do it.
Like
Exactly.
for your soccer trophies or your track team.
Do we have to
for
keep anything
picnic
funny
or
in mind
whatever.
about Ryder because of the camp? Like the camp would not be, or the pavilion at Ryder would not be rentable during weekdays.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well, that's
I don't
just
just an
that's
extra.
obvious,
yeah, I think right. We couldn't. It's not rentable.
But for the ones that are available,
Right.
then it's
Yeah, for the
cheaper,
ones
so
that are
you can limit it that way.
What do you think of that?
That, the other thought I had was that you just have a lower rate in general. That is affordable for all, and it's, so if you take that 225 rate and you knock it down to 175, if you look, we are comparable to other communities. So dropping it down $50 to $75 might make it more affordable, and it will also make it more affordable for those not-for-profits.
It was $225 back in 2015 before we did all these renovations, though.
I mean,
You know?
I'm not. I think 225 is still reasonable. I would be in favor of the 175 for the Monday through Thursday.
I'd even go a little lower, like 150, just so that the groups have access on a weekday. You know, you want to have your barbecue for your scout troop or whatever, you can pick a Wednesday night or whatever. You know,
Well,
and
the
I don't
the
think,
scout troop specifically are the ones who said at least knock off $50. They said that's what I thought they said to me. Maybe they said 75, but I thought they said.
I didn't. I know that you said that. I didn't retain that number. But you know, there are a bunch. You know, and I don't think that it's a big draw for. We have a bunch of pavilions and areas, and I think 150 for a weekday is reasonable when we have the staff on.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so
But it would be
weekdays
across the
excluding holidays, correct? And this is only for
Yes.
the period of time that pavilions can be rented,
Yes.
which is what, May 30th through September 1st or whatever it is.
Weekdays excluding holidays. Okay.
Monday
that's
through
also the-
Thursday?
Monday through Thursday.
Not Friday.
Not weekdays. Monday through Thursdays, excluding holidays.
And that's the full day rental. So basically, we're saying like dawn to dusk, the same as it would be.
Get there as soon as the sun rises.
I plan to. I plan to.
gonna have a party. You better invite us.
You're all invited, obviously.
Okay.
And no discount for you just because you don't even ask. No exceptions. Okay.
Okay, next was about the noise ordinance and,
So, right, so we have some considerations to make based on the fact that we have this lovely stage at Angle Park, as well as that we have some of our parks that are in the midst of residential areas, including actually our stage now because we have an apartment complex that's didn't used to be there and now it is. So we do have to have some consideration. So Bill, one of the things that you suggested was that we first identify how loud our own concert series is.
right.
Right?
So I've asked Keith Heilman?
Heilman?
Heilman, who is our sound guy for the Friday night concerts, if he could let us know and measure the sound decibels at the Friday night concerts so that we have a basis to kind of judge. Because when you say 60 decibels, what is that? And you can look it up on the internet, and it's basically people talking. It's 60, 65, 90 is a dog barking. But what does that mean as far as music playing? So we're going to have ask for a basis so we can kind of determine that.
And then you said you looked at some other codes and found.
Right. So in the town code, it says that there's between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. I believe there's the decibel level is supposed to be at no more than 60 for outdoors. So we would need some sort of. I've looked at other municipalities, and that they have some in their code exemptions for town or city or village approved events that possibly could be implemented so that if we are looking for something which is likely that's going to be more than 60 for a concert, that we would be in compliance with the code.
Can we explore some directionality of the speakers, particularly at the waterfront? Because when they point them one way, it carries across the water and can be heard through the entire park, all the way down to the spray park and all the other rental areas when somebody's even just sitting on the stage dancing. But if they, somebody was playing very loud music, I had them turn the speakers, and it was no longer heard all the way through the park. So I don't know how you regulate that, but it does make a big difference.
I think we could probably put something in to say speakers need to be directed towards the area where in front
Or
of the
inward
stage.
from, as opposed to
Yeah.
outward toward the rest of the park.
Is that, could we put something like that in? Is that a weird thing to include?
Who's gonna monitor it?
I mean, if there's complaints, then you have that to lean on. I don't know. I guess not.
I mean, from a
Well, maybe
I-
it's something that we
I'm-
could just put into the app,
Aren't there
the
other
permit
factors on the
that we
water
give
that
them.
carry, like even wind and stuff, like how sound carries when you're near water? Like, could you really guarantee that just positioning the speakers on any given day?
No, I mean, it just made a huge difference.
Plus, a lot of times that's not a permitted, somebody using
No, that
it,
wasn't a
right?
permitted use.
I think it's just something that, if you're not
Same
getting
with
spe-
people putting
again, this
barbecues
is-
on the stage.
Right, well, this is a special, this is basically special permission to, if you're
Okay.
asking for use of the stage, then we're saying, okay, you can have sound, whatever, but,
Okay.
okay.
But I do think that the speaker should be aimed toward your event and not out to the apartments and or, you know, prison.
Again, I think we probably put something on the permit to make that suggestion. Please make sure that your speakers are aimed, blah, 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 blah.
The way that it's worded right now is in all bold, no amplified music permitted.
Right.
So,
We're gonna try to change
Right.
that, I think, based on,
but then no music shall be played or loudspeakers used after 9 p.m. on any day except as specifically authorized in a permit issued by the town of Ossining. Moreover, the playing of such music and the use of such loudspeakers shall comply in all respects with Chapter 130 noise of the town of Ossining Code.
right, so that's where we'd have to look at the noise code to see if we could put an exception in. I think
Yeah,
that's
well,
what you're suggesting.
when we talked about this a few weeks ago, we talked about how when it expanded beyond just this permit, and that changes would have to be made to make sure that the provisions of the code with respect to parks and with respect to noise are consistent with what's in the permit.
Okay, so let's go from the base of where we are right now with our concerts that we haven't really received a lot of complaints about. People seem to enjoy them. They're going to the concerts. We aren't getting complaints from the neighbors about our concerts being too loud, or we have gotten complaints from other events. So that's where we really want to make sure that, again, that we're setting forth a good example and our expectations are, we're modeling what were our expectations.
Are realistic and
Right.
reasonable.
And actually, people are complaining about the restaurant's noise sometimes. Not so much our concerts. Is it coming off the restaurant? I've heard a few
Yeah.
from that.
Okay, the next issue was regarding insurance for rentals. One in particular was for bouncy castles. Hot topic.
My favorite.
So if we need to have on the application a question if they're going to have bouncy castles or other inflatables as part of their rental of the pavilions or picnic area. And one, we got to be okay with them plugging into our electric, or are we going to require them to bring their own generators? That's something we need to determine, and maybe we could talk with Mario more about that to get his feeling about that.
Okay, and then we have spoken with our insurance agent about what we need to do because NYMER insures us and they have specific exemptions for inflatables and other
Inflated residents.
egos. No, no, we there's some other, I can't remember what the detail is now, but like electronic not attractions, amusements or attractions or something like that. It's not. It actually isn't inflated. So because there's that exemption, we've been given specific direction from our insurance agent of the language that needs to be included, so we can get you that language and make sure that that's attached to the application anytime somebody decides that they want to have an inflatable as part of their pavilion or other park rental.
In the interest of transparency, I just want to say, in my professional life, I do represent an Ossining nonprofit, and we also just filled out an application for a rental that did involve a request for inflatables and DJ. So
Okay.
I'm recusing myself from
Okay.
further discussion.
Okay, and since we don't have a lot of other people, we'll have that continued discussion after, we'll send those.
That's another one of those examples of where, now we're contemplating things that aren't necessarily consistent with what's in the code. Because right now, the code only requires insurance for over a certain amount of people.
Okay, great.
So that's just another thing that we're gonna have to keep in mind and look at going forward when we're talking about these comprehensive amendments.
Okay.
That it's not just noise and the parks, it's insurance and everything that comes with it.
Okay.
Okay, the next topic was about alcohol at the picnic areas and pavilions. Currently on the application, it talks about that the folks that they have to get a New York State permit, which there really isn't a New York State permit to, if you're not selling it, which there is, which is usually handled by the organization that's coming in and doing the selling. They would have their site authority to sell alcohol. But if somebody's bringing in their own private, there is nothing that, there's no permit for that. So it comes down to, is that something that's going to be permitted by the town, or is it something that's a no alcohol policy? And that's something
Do you
I
have
think
any
needs to be
suggestions on it or
discussed.
not? Are you looking like you might have had a thought on that now? I know.
I mean, I think there's something in the code that precludes it unless otherwise authorized by the town.
The other thing, isn't there a public consumption law in Austining? So does that apply to the parks? You can't have.
I mean,
you
I would
can't
have to go back and look at the
Can't
code.
have open.
I think there's an
alcohol outs.
exception.
Just for the record, what we've done in the past, in the event that someone is actually reading this application and doing what's prescribed by it, so even if they're just serving alcohol, they've come to us with the section from the New York State temporary beer whatever permit that would be for selling it and just asking for landlord's authorization. So we've had the town board pass a resolution saying, yeah, it's fine for this event between this hour and this hour, and have the supervisor sign it. So that's what we've done in the very few instances where people have been having a picnic where they're not selling but serving. And so we, I suppose, could look into whether that's good enough.
I haven't looked at this in a while. I would need to take another look at the code regarding that. I'm thinking back to when I think this came up much earlier this year, and I think it may have been in a different context.
Okay, so we'll get a little direction from council on this. Okay.
And then the last item is, I'm gonna have to kind of set the stage. So we have a lot of activities and special events that we run, and a lot of these events take cost the town additional monies in overtime for parks, police, DPW. And some of these events are events that are co-sponsored with the town, and everybody's on. Another, Earth Day celebration. It's on a weekend day. July 4th celebration, the fireworks. But we also get a lot of other events where not-for-profits or even for-profit organizations want to do events. So they'll come to the rec and then ask for our support, which will sometimes may end up in parks overtime, police overtime, DPW overtime. So we wanted to establish kind of a routine or a protocol to address this, so that we would, and we talked about if an event came, it would be through our office in recreation, we would determine if it was an event that we weren't co-sponsoring, that it would be kind of classified as a special event, where then it would get bumped up for discussion with the supervisor and the board if need be, to determine if is this something that we do want to get involved in and co-sponsor, and therefore the fees would be, additional fees and costs would occur, or is it something that we don't, and then set up rates that we could be passed on to cover the cost for this. So we'd have to establish rates, how much is it for a parks person overtime? How much is it for a police? On different days, it might be more. Sundays are double time, according to the contract. So that's something that I think we need to look at, because we get a lot of these things that people want to come in, use the parks, have these events, and then are looking for recreation to support it, and it's not something that we are normally doing.
We just
I think we have to look at it.
We just approved the Columbus Lodge, for example, to use Engle Park for the whole day for their Italian feast on August 26th, I want to say. We had one, and that they're I don't know if they're considered, are they not for profit? I would think they are, but I'm not positive.
They're not for profit.
Yeah, they're not for profit, right? So does that make a difference? They're a service organization. I don't know. Are they? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
It's also an anticipated community event that's been going on forever. Do we count the? I know, I get it.
Yeah.
Same as the Portuguese festival, same as the,
Exactly.
Right,
and I know the
there's a lot of
Portuguese Festival,
events.
the village provides support. The village fair, which is a general sponsored event, the village provides support. Again, a lot of these events, we don't charge the firefighters. Parade, we don't charge extra.
But there's a difference between the Portuguese fair, the village fair are public events.
Right.
Anyone can go to them. It's
Yeah.
So it's a
different
Columbus
than,
festival.
but it's different than having a private party when
Right, but a lot of these organizations will say, "Oh, we're open to the public." Like
We're gonna have fundraiser.
Right.
We're doing a fundraiser for something.
open to the
and
public, or
we
Right.
want, you know,
yeah, we're just gonna charge for food, or we're gonna have some vendors down there, you know, etc. So
Gotcha.
I think it's a good idea to put in place some protocol to like what you're suggesting, that you would identify if it's considered a special event that gets bumped to the board to make a decision about, and then we would have to discuss it. If it's something that we are a co-sponsor of, likelihood is we're not going to charge. If it's a public event that
Community event.
community event, we might again not charge. And if it's not a community event, or somehow seems somehow more restrictive for whatever reason, then we would consider that we would charge. So I think that those are good suggestions, that we could identify some costs and then would have to build that in so that we could be explicit upfront about whatever those might be. Especially because Angle Park is a larger space. Okay, is that it?
I think that's it.
Well, just one more thing. Is this sort of part and parcel with the security deposit thing? Because I think that's something that's important that we talk about also.
Okay.
So right now, whoever rents the pavilion, whether it be a family of 4 or a party of 200, has to put in a $75 refundable security deposit. So that's anticipating that they're going to leave the place how they left it. We know that that doesn't always happen. So most recently this past weekend. So rather than punish everybody, being the family of 4 all the way up to the group of 200, we had preliminary discussions about having the deposit be at the discretion of the superintendent of recreation. So for example, if the Feldman family wanted to come and do a 10-person picnic, that's probably going to be 75. But if somebody wants to have 150 people come and have a dance party, it might be in the discretion of the superintendent to say, you know what, it's potentially going to get a little messy. Let's do the 150. And if you leave it perfectly clean, you get your check back. We just hand it right back to you. But you know, if you make a big old mess, we're keeping the 150 instead of just the 75, because the 75 does not cover one of our guys to go up there and clean up. It just doesn't.
So, but is 150 the highest that you're proposing? Because the code
The
says,
code,
yeah,
right.
the
And so we
code
did
says
have
that
this
it can't
conversation.
exceed- yeah,
Right.
So we can't exceed.
you can't exceed the amount of the actual fee. So, yeah, so with 150, Maddie's example is perfectly fine, because I don't think at any point in time we've discussed any fees being less than 150, at least for the pavilion. It may be different for different
Picnic areas are-
spaces, but yeah, the 138.4 says the rec department can assess a cleanup deposit equal to the amount of the actual fee.
Agree with that? Okay. In that case, thank you.
So we are not ready to change any fees yet, except for the actual pavilion rental fees, correct? That's the only, I mean, of this whole application, this whole permit, that's the only thing that we're prepared to do.
Well, the stage rental fee,
Right, I think that kind of collapses in with the pavilion.
we have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can do the security deposit, I think. We can.
I'm not sure if that's in the fee schedule. I would have to look.
Okay.
I don't, yeah,
I'm not certain. I think it's just the actual rentals, but also the picnic areas. Are we good holding at 75 for the day?
I don't know.
How many have gotten rented?
Yeah, do we know?
Few.
Very few.
Because they're used
Mhm.
consistently. I'm just
We
wondering if
also
they were actually rented.
Don't have signs up yet. We do not have our signs.
There's a challenge.
Yes. So I think that when we got our signs up and it's clearer that these are rentable areas and permitted areas, that people will actually.
Because people want to. I mean, when
Yes.
we put them there and people asked if they could rent
Correct.
them, they were thrilled at the idea and wanted to line up.
So
But
our
I
signs
guess
are
they don't know
coming.
how.
They've been ordered. I can't remember.
Signs and they need to be marketed.
I don't remember.
People know that we
Okay.
have them.
Anyway, we're working on that. So we've had a number of stumbling blocks that have kept us from ordering those. So I think that's being said. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
I'm going to actually move up our conversation on the community choice aggregation to the folks in the back falling asleep from Sustainable Westchester. I'm sorry. I forgot that I was going to move you guys up earlier. So come on up, Dan and Jenna. We are going to be talking about the next round of community choice aggregation, which is the
Yeah, just,
purchasing of, I do, but it's a different one, I think. The purchasing of, electricity en masse, basically. It's a way for the town to offer a benefit to our residents so that they can purchase electricity more sustainably, as well as so we can push demand for sustainable energy production, as well as I'm sliding back as you guys are looking at that. We can push demand for sustainable energy production, as well as reduce costs to our ratepayers who were originally never opted out of Con Ed being their electricity supplier. So you're still going to get your bill from Con Ed. What?
All right, go ahead, keep going.
So a couple years ago, we joined the Community Choice Aggregation Group through Sustainable Westchester, which then became the entity Westchester Power that purchased electricity that was supplied.
Right.
We opted for the green option. You could have the green or the brown option. Town of
The
Austin.
default is the green.
Right. The default, no. The default is not the green.
You have to opt in.
We opted into the green.
We opted in that people can still choose the brown or the green, but the default setting, if they don't choose anything, was the green.
I'm not sure if you could opt out of the green. Well, we can ask that question. You could have opted out of the green if you were in Austin, and we chose green. Okay.
Yeah, you had a choice, but if you didn't choose either,
Then
you
were
would
in-
automatically go towards the green.
Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what ratepayers have saved, what energy's been saved as a result, and then where we are now in terms of our next round of purchasing. And Dan Welch, take it away.
Yes, thank you. So the thing that's driving us here besides oh, right. Okay. Besides just liking to come and visit you guys, is the fact that we need to get the RFP out for the new contract in the beginning of September. That's scheduled. Okay. There we go. Yes. So that should go out in the beginning of September. We kind of got squeezed when the Public Service Commission added a new step in the post-contract process. We have to have another meeting after the contract is awarded, or another public session to let people know, these are the conditions of the new contract. So they threw that in there. So we got to pack all this in order to get it done in time to do the 30-day notification letter, which needs to happen at the end of the year in time that that's all done, that they send in the enrollments and everybody can roll in without having a break in their participation in the program. So we've got a pretty tight schedule. That's why we're hustling around. We were at Sleepy Hollow earlier to try and remind people we need them to sign off on the MOU for the new contract. Just to orient, we are doing okay. Quick executive summary of the pricing situation at launch. We had a target mechanism which stipulated that we were going to go ahead if the pricing was lower than the previous 12 months average. Those averages you see in column 1 here, that's what those came out to be. See over on the right is our current pricing, although I should have put in, I did
Sorry,
have,
the current, the average price of Con Ed's or whoever's.
yes, I'm sorry, the average price for the Con Ed utility equivalent for the energy portion. So we did beat those marks. You see our current prices, actually those prices include the 0.32 cents that New York State added onto everybody's bills last year. So at launch, we were actually 0.32 cents less than those numbers. So we did beat the cap. The proposal for 2018 is to use essentially the same mechanism, going with the previous trailing average, with the exception being that we are proposing that we use 24 months for the commercial, and you'll see in a bit the commercial volatility is such that if we went with the 12 months, we'd probably be a little tight in terms of being able to accommodate the green energy RECs within that cap and feel safe that everybody was going to be able to come in there. We'll look at the prices there. Just again to
remind everybody what RECs are, please.
Yes, sorry, renewable energy certificates. So the power that we're purchasing is comprised of two elements. One is the physical electrons, which is the base power supply, and you can consider that kind of essentially the standard grid supply. And then to go renewable, that's done through the purchase of renewable energy certificates. These are the way that the renewable characteristics of the power are separated out and monetized, that they can create a market for these things. So in the first contract, well, I'm kind of jumping the gun. I have a slide on some of this stuff. So anyway, that's
So
the
you mean, so let's say I'm a person who has a bunch of windmills. I produce X amount of credits, and then I would sell 100 of my credits to you because that's how many you want or whatever. So that way you are sure that you have wind energy as your source.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just
See.
trying to
Yep.
just trying to reiterate it for the people that are watching that
Right.
don't really get where these credits come from. So a solar or a wind or a water source would have these credits, and you would be buying them to say that you had provided green energy as opposed to a different source.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to reiterate.
And I'm gonna, since we're on the subject, just to let it flow, I'm going to skip over to the REC slide here. And in the first contract, we were utilizing the Greenie REC system. And the RECs are essentially a way of accounting for that power. You don't want the people to double sell it or whatever. There needs to be a rigorous accounting system. So nationally, the Greenie system is kind of the gold standard for that. That's what we used. We did very well with that. We experienced a great success around the carbon mitigation, something like 330,000 tons of CO2 equivalent that we displaced. So we're very happy with that. Recently, the Public Service Commission has issued a directive saying that for CCAs to claim green power as their supply, they need to go through the New York State system. So we'll be buying New York RECs going forward as opposed to the national RECs. So that means that we will not buy these national wind ones that I'm showing here, but we did go out for indicative pricing, and we find that we are at least today, the indicative pricing, and hopefully a month from now we'll still be in that ballpark, is coming at 0.2 cents, which is actually lower than the wind RECs that we have today. Those cost us 0.3 cents at the time. So we're pretty happy about that. As I knock on wood. Let's go back quickly again. Just to show, we did get savings out of the program. For most of us here, the goal is obviously to help facilitate the move to renewable energy, but the savings are kind of the ticket in the door, right? I mean, if the program is not economically doing well for us, it makes it very difficult for us to have the rest of the dialogue and build the rest of the program out. So we did see savings. On an aggregate basis, it's an impressive number. We're over $12 million at this point. For the individual homeowner account, it's not a huge number. In the 25 months to date, someone who was with the green supply saved about $140. That's in 25 months, so figure $60, $70 on an annual basis. This is not, you're not going on vacation with this. It's not a huge number, but considering we did that and we bought green power, normally you'd think you'd have to pay a premium, and And of course, we're building this program, which has all the other ancillary projects that are going on around it. On the commercial side, we did the savings were flat, barely over break even, so even sort of less exciting in terms of the dollars. But we still like to think that we have the additional benefits of rate stabilization. So you've kind of guaranteed rate there. You're not going to experience the spikes. They're out there contributing to the green power supply, moving the needle on that. And it makes them a part of this community energy program, which most of the small businesses I know are very community oriented, and I know that resonates with a lot of them. But the actual dollar savings are not real high, but it's still save money and work green. So to help us think about the price targets for the new contract, we did go back and mash all of the utility numbers in various ways, slicing and dicing, just to sort of orient ourselves around this, because the exercise is not a matter of projection. We don't have a crystal ball. We're not able to look into the future and see what energy prices are, but we're trying to get comfortable with the place we're at in terms of this formula for the bid. So as we looked at the annual averages of those first three, we looked at taking the average of the 3 years of the past 2 years. We looked at the trailing 12-month, 24, 36 months, and you see it's hovering. It's over 8. It dips under a little bit at one point, but it kind of gives us a sense of where prices are. Did the same on the commercial side. So, it's same kind of idea. We're hovering. We're at 9. We're 9.5. Started out higher in the case of the commercial pricing, and it has come down a bit. Another important data element for us in thinking about this is the indicative pricing that we obtained just recently. These are prices that represent what we would get if we went out today through our own supplier today. And so we look at these, and we're seeing that the 24-month window is probably the optimum for us. As soon as you go up another half a year, it's adding half a cent. But this gives us, again, some type of indicator that we can help to triangulate our targets with. We looked at the renewable energy certificate prices.
Do you define low impact hydro as opposed to?
Yeah, there is a standard. I think it's called the Low Impact Hydro Institute or something like that. And I can't recite for you what are all the the kind of criteria, but you can imagine it's this kind of not interrupting natural fish spawnings and things like that, as opposed to big intrusive type facilities. So bringing all that information together, this is kind of where we're at. If we look at the indicative pricing on the left, the power, and then adding the RECs, it says that today for residential we'd be a little under 7.9 cents, and the commercial would be around 8.7, 8.8. So that was fairly heartening, but again, markets are markets. Hopefully in a month we won't see crazy things happen that takes that much higher. Then in deciding again these caps that we put in the MOU, the 12-month trailing average of 8.26 certainly leaves us with the space that we're not going to worry that if the bid comes in 0.1% higher than we anticipated, all of a sudden we're stuck and the program doesn't go forward. That wasn't working with the commercial because of that movement on the price there. So we did propose that we go with the 24-month trailing average, which puts us at 9.06 cents, which is still, it's almost a cent lower than we are our pricing today. So it's a big improvement. But that would give us enough room, looking at the indicatives, that we can be comfortable that we're not going to get a situation where whole municipalities opt out of the green product, for example, because they feel that we've exceeded that commercial cap rate. And it's still, it's still a very attractive price, and there's a good logic behind it. So that's our proposal for that. You have seen the MOU draft and the
Yeah, I've reviewed it and it's fine.
same mechanisms last time. We did do we simplified the pricing compliance section, because we figured why bother putting in all the language about 12 months, and all, since we have the numbers, we just put the numbers in. So that's there. We updated the contract. Those updates were also fairly straightforward, mostly around temporal changes, in as much as we're not a launch anymore, we're in operation. So a lot of changes of that nature, just straightening out the language. And really the only thing of real substance that you could say, we added one more appendix for the data supply. We want to make sure that all the work that we've done with Constellation and Ampion in defining the data that we're getting, that's allowing us to enhance our look at the data, is captured, and the new supplier is obliged to provide it in the same format. So we added that. So the mantra is to stick with essentially the same structure of the program, and we feel we're doing that. Yeah. Should I leave this up, or should I?
Does anybody have any questions about the slides that you want to go back and review? Are there any questions?
No, just that the average homeowner saved about $140 for the year.
Is that for
That's
the
on
year
the
or
green
25
program?
months.
2 years.
For the
25 years.
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I was
again,
hoping for a little more, but I'm glad that we were able to provide green energy and also at least
Some
give a
tiny
little
bit of
bit of savings
Yeah.
for our residents.
Right.
While making a little bit of a difference.
exactly. Okay. And then thank you very much for your time. And we do have, for our special meeting, we do have a resolution to adopt the MOU,
Great. Awesome.
that you guys go forward. All right, fantastic, yes. Okay, going back to work session. Okay, I'm just gonna go quickly through our other two work session, hydrofracking gas. I was initially approached by George Klein from our local Sierra Club, who brought to my attention that there was a resolution circulating to protect us from emissions generated from natural gas infrastructure facilities, which have the potential to have a major impact on our air quality. It is a very long resolution that we are going to be considering in our special meeting, but one that I believe is worth approving. We are in good company, as other communities in Westchester have done so, specifically the towns of Bedford, Cortland, Lewisboro, North Salem, Pound Ridge, Somers, the city of Peekskill, and the villages of Croton-on-Hudson and Hastings-on-Hudson in Westchester, and in Carmel, Southeast, Carmel and Southeast in Putnam, plus farther upstate, Bethel and Tustin in Sullivan, Dryden in Tompkins, and New Falls in Ulster County. They've all adopted this resolution. There's also support by Putnam, Rockland, Ulster, and Westchester counties, and City of White Plains. Over 100 organizations have signed in support of the recommendations in the resolution. So here's the lowdown from Susanna Glidden, who is also with the Sierra Club and Stop the Algonquin Pipeline Expansion. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is in the proposal phase of modifying their oil and gas air emissions regulations, and they're seeking public stakeholder input. In order to help protect the health of New York residents, experts in air emissions control technology and public health have compiled the rigorous recommendations in the resolution that we are considering to significantly strengthen the regulations. The more municipalities and county legislatures that adopt it, the more likely that these recommendations will be included in the DEC's new regs. It's critical that this time-sensitive resolution be adopted as soon as possible prior to the release of the draft regulations. New York has more than 50 compressor stations and many more metering and regulating stations and pigging stations, as well as large gas-fueled power plants that release air pollutants that are linked to adverse health effects, impacting those who live in close proximity. Currently, the New York State DEC does not require the use of emission control technology for all gas infrastructure facilities that could substantially reduce hazardous emissions, even though such technology has become standard practice within the industry and is readily available. In fact, the DEC exempts many emission sources that exist at gas infrastructure sites from regulation requirements, such as most metering and regulating stations and pigging stations. In April, North Salem schools were forced to cancel outdoor play and sports activities for 2 days in response to strong below-down emissions from the nearby unregulated Turk Hill metering station in Southeast. Now, while New York State is beginning to develop these regulations, it's incumbent upon us to protect our residents, communities, and property values by pressing the state to formulate the most robust regulations to minimize hazardous air pollution from gas infrastructure. I know that I sent this out. You guys had a chance to review. Are there any questions or further discussion in our work session?
So who wrote the original language that we're looking at tonight?
I believe it came from the Stop Algonquin Pipeline organization.
Okay, and all the other communities signed it the way it is?
I haven't reviewed every single one of those.
All right, well, has Christy, have you looked at it?
I mean, I've reviewed it. Can I tell you that I know for 100% certainty that everything in here is accurate? No, because it's a lot of facts. But I mean, it's not really a legal issue. It's more of a policy issue.
Supportive.
What the board is, you just need to be comfortable with the language in here and what it's saying.
I mean, I have had the opportunity to work with both these organizations when I was working with Sandy's office, and I do know that they are very research oriented, and they do their due diligence and they do their homework. I know that they are organizations that are trying to put in place controls that will protect our communities. Again, having worked with them, particularly on the siting of the Algonquin pipeline underneath Indian Point. And the potential negative impacts that could have if something were to go awry. So I think that they're an organization that's basically trying to protect us. And
you find them to be
looking at more than anybody else. They're again an advocacy group that's looking at what is happening oftentimes behind the scenes that we're not all privy to or we're all paying attention to. And they're bringing this to our attention now because they're looking to get more communities on board to say, yes, we need more rigorous restrictions and regulations in place, and there shouldn't be exemptions for this, type of production or that type of production or this type of metering or monitoring facility because it is a public health issue. So I think that it's, again, not a bad thing for us to join in and agree with this resolution. Okay. So I can't remember if I had brought to your attention. I just want to mention while I'm talking about it because George Klein had come to meet with us, and he had also asked if we would sign a pledge to support the transition to 100% clean renewable electricity by sometime in the future. And I just wanted to let you know that that was out there, and I can't remember if I shared it with you or not, but I will share it with you. I don't know if this is something that we want to necessarily adopt as a municipality, but I know that we certainly have been working from many different directions at transitioning to as many clean energy paths as we can, from changing our LEDs to monitoring our own usage to
Getting electric
partnering with
vehicles and-
CCA, getting electric vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're doing, putting bike lanes in to offer people alternative transportation, all the different things that we do. So we might want to, and I know that the other communities in New York State have adopted these types of resolutions or pledges, at least, if it's not exactly a resolution. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that Sierra Club had asked us to consider it.
I mean, I'll look at it, but I'm all for moving forward and doing our best to, reduce our footprint in any way, shape, or form, save our residents and our taxpayers money. I don't need to pledge. I'm not going to say I'm going to go 100% because we have to look at each instance as it comes. But I'm all for continuing to do each step that we can.
All right, fantastic. Okie doke. Now, we're trying to find a way to not have to read that entire resolution. That's awesome. Okay, fantastic. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the storm surge barriers in the Hudson River. So last week, I attended a meeting which was graciously initiated and hosted by our New York State Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, who brought in Riverkeeper to talk with some of the municipalities in her district about the potential impacts that some of the suggested storm risk management proposals the Army Corps of Engineers is entertaining could have on the Hudson River. The bottom line, according to Riverkeeper, is that when these plans were promulgated or put forth after Sandy and Irene and Lee storms, they were done so in response to the question, how do we protect communities against a storm surge? Unfortunately, according to Riverkeeper, what the question did not include was how to protect said communities against storm surge and sea level rise. Without considering the two together, we have the potential to make the situation much worse, as well as kill life in the Hudson River as we know it. As this is not something that is in the best interest of the Hudson River communities, we're being encouraged to urge the Army Corps to extend the comment period and remove some of the options up for consideration from the table and more thoroughly evaluate others before moving forward. Similar to the unintended consequences that the anchorages could have had, Riverkeeper is advising that some of the potential remedies being proposed could have the same type or even worse of a negative impact in the long term on our communities and the nature that shapes them and us. So this afternoon, very late in the day, we did receive a resolution that Hastings was considering adopting, which we've added, again, very late in the day to our agenda for this evening to consider adopting, which is basically suggesting that the options that the Army Corps is we think is pushing should not necessarily be the options, that they should be evaluating the ones that have less of an impact, that are more gradually brought on board so that they address the sea level rise issue also, and that there's more time for the public to weigh in on these than the suggested, I think, 30 days, so that there would be a 90-day period of comment period, which is very similar to what we did with the anchorages, which was that we asked them to extend the comment period. And what happened when that happened was that they had a huge number of comments, which they then were forced to address. So that's kind of where we are with them. The problem is, and the reason that there's such short notice on this is because I think August 20th is the deadline for us to weigh in on this, and we don't have another meeting between now and then. So that's poor Karen. I'm sorry. That is. Is there any discussion that you guys want to have on this?
Yeah, I mean, I see. I know you said it late today, and get that. Yeah, putting a dam. Some of the options that they're looking at that they're favoring is to basically dam up the bottom of the Hudson. If we get a Floyd event, we're just going to turn, beavers make a dam, we get a pond. This is not beneficial to us.
Exactly.
And not to mention the fish and the...
Exactly. Right. And just to let
Not to say stupid, but really.
Yeah. So, right, and I will tell you that Congresswoman Lowy shared a letter that she'd sent to the Army Corps asking that all of these be evaluated. HHRT, Historic Hudson River Towns, sent out some guidance today also saying, that all of these things should have NEPA review so that there's full environmental impact review before any of these options, the 1 through the
considered.
5 options that they're putting forth are considered instead of just picking and choosing a couple to have a full environmental review. So there's comments from HHRT, and then this one resolution, which I actually thought was pretty good, that Hastings sent out, and it might have come initially from Riverkeeper. I'm not 100% sure that they were suggesting. So in any case, if
So basically, it asks to extend the comment period and look at all the options at their.
correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, it's actually, in this particular resolution, it says that we should look at the proposed number 5, which is the perimeter only resolution, and that's the one that Riverkeeper is suggesting that we consider, and not the other ones. And it talks again about what the problems are with the proposed barriers that they impede estuaries, tidal flow. Well, we're gonna hear this resolution very soon, and that one is not as long as the other one, but we'll have that one read, and I think, again, that it's comprehensive, and I think that, again, it's something that we should take seriously and weigh in on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to exploring all the resolutions, but yeah, the dam is. Okay,
Okay?
onward.
All right, fantastic. Okay, with that, I'd like to make a motion to return to our special meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, nobody's opposed. All right, I'm going to read my announcements as fast as humanly possible. It was a little touch and go last week's waterfront concert, but we had a stalwart group of music and sunset lovers show up for Powderfinger, who did a great job covering some rock and roll faves. That's okay, I do not take offense. Hello, public. I love you guys. This Friday, get ready for another of Austin's favorites. The Mike Risco Band takes the stage at 7 p.m. at the Engle Park stage. We hope it'll be a little cooler this Friday with no threat of rain, and that everyone will come out for a great night of music against a spectacular backdrop. Last Friday night, we co-hosted. No. See, this is what happens. Okay, hold on, everybody. Hold on. Stick with me. That would be a disaster. No, my battery did not die. I recharged. Don't worry, I recharged. I have 91%. Okay, it just didn't want me to keep going on my announcements, I guess. We co-hosted with the village the annual Fireman's Parade, and once again, our department looked fantastic. Thanks so much to all those involved in organizing it and strutting our collaborative stuff. Unfortunately, at the tail end of the celebration, the department was called into service to fight a fire at the historic Olive Opera House in Austin's downtown. Thanks go to our force for doing a great job containing it and keeping the damage to a minimum, and thankfully no residents were displaced and no one was hurt. Also, thanks go out to our mutual aid assists from Croton-on-Hudson, Yorktown Heights, Thornwood, Millwood, and Terrytown departments for helping us out with this one. Last week I attended a meeting, which I already discussed, so I'm going to skip over that because we talked about the meeting with Riverkeeper. We've also been in continuing discussions with Green Austin and the Village of Austin and 511 New York Rideshare about how we, the Austin community, village, and town, can participate in International Rideshare Day on September 21st. We're hoping to bring a number of interesting and innovative options to Austin so people can get a taste of alternatives that they may enjoy having, which may also have the added benefit of opening up parking spaces for other uses, helping us to be healthier and also improving our air quality and the environment overall. So stay tuned. The county has shared that a heat advisory continues to be in effect for the entire tri-state area through 8 p.m. this evening, then again Wednesday afternoon through 8 p.m. tomorrow, and it includes potential hazards of maximum temperatures in the upper 80s to lower 90s and maximum heat indices in the mid 90s to around 100. The impacts include that heat and humidity may cause heat stress during outdoor exertion or extended exposure. Extreme heat can cause illness and death among the at-risk population who cannot stay cool, and seniors, infants, and those with chronic health problems or mental health conditions are at an increased risk from the heat. So please be aware and take heed. Here's an option for tomorrow night to help you stay cool. Wednesday, August 8th, Green Austin and the Sierra Club will be co-sponsoring the screening of Reinventing Power in the Boudars Theater at the Austin Public Library. The 50-minute film will introduce you to people in 8 states who have had their lives changed by the renewable energy industry. Come learn about how we do not need to choose between sacrificing jobs and sacrificing our environment. The film will be followed by a moderated discussion. This free event begins at 7 p.m. If you want to hear the Microscope Band twice this week, and I know many of you will, you have a chance to do so. They are playing at Law Park from 7 to 9 p.m. this Thursday night, as their concert last week was rained out. The Briarcliff Chamber is sponsoring that local series with food, wine, and beer. And did I say that it's at Law Park in Briarcliff? And other items for sale. Don't forget your chair or blanket. Get ready for another great night out for free. For the tennis players among us, the Croton Harmon Community Tennis Association is hosting the Croton Summer Classic on Friday, August 10th, and I think it's in collaboration with the Austin Tennis organization, which I forget the title of, and Saturday, August 11th. Come to their fundraiser ready to compete. NTRP levels of 3 to 4.5. Men and women are welcome. Visit crotontennis.org/Croton Classic for more information. On Saturday, August 11th at 12:30 p.m., the Austin Public Library will be burying its time capsule as part of the 125th anniversary celebration. You're welcome to attend. Light refreshments will be served on the back patio on library grounds. This event is open to the public and free. The next walking tour of the historic Sparta neighborhood at the south end of Austin will be held this Sunday, August 12th. The tour will begin at the Jug Tavern on Rockledge Avenue and Revolutionary Road behind the CVS at 1 p.m. with a showing of the video, The Battle for Sparta. Participants will then walk about 6 blocks through the neighborhood, learning about historic homes in the Landmark District. The tour will end around 3 p.m. Dr. Alan Stahl, a neighborhood resident and chair of the Village of Austin Historic Preservation Committee, will lead the tour commission. The other dates scheduled for 2018 are both Sunday, September 9th and October 7th. Check the Jug Tavern website, jugtavern.org, for updates. The tour is free, but participation is limited to 20 people. For a reservation or further information, contact Alan at jugtavern.org. On Monday, August 13th, another Jug Tavern event occurs. From garden to table, a lecture on the local colonial diet that folks in our region enjoyed back in the 17th century, and the evening will end with refreshments based on historic recipes. This book talk by Peter G. Rose, author, food historian, and Westchester resident, is part of the Sparta Speaks 2018 series. It's a free event, but seating, as always, at the Jug is limited. Please email info@jugtavern.org to save your spot or to learn more. Doors open at 7 p.m. Are you still looking for something for your littlest kids to do before school starts? Bethany Arts Community on Somerstown Road is offering their first ever Scribbler Summer Camp sessions starting Monday, August 13th for day campers entering kindergarten through 4th grade. Week 1, which is 8/13 through 8/17, is Super Size Me and encourages campers to make large-scale art like giant self-portraits and sculptures. Week 2, which is from August 20th to the 24th, will feature mazes and puzzles as part of From Start to Finish. And week 3, the 27th through the 31st of August, will help campers go back to school in style by making their own school supplies. Learn more at bethanyarts.org. Since we'll not be seeing each other next week, I do want to mention a couple of other events coming up. On Saturday, August 18th, the Austin Historic Cemeteries Conservancy's next gravestone cleaning and restoration workshop is from 9 a.m. to noon at Historic Dale Cemetery, 104 Havel Street. It's free, fun, and educational for all ages, no experience necessary, material and training provided, and students can get community service credit. Just follow the yellow signs at Dale Cemetery. Also, Lobster Fest was rescheduled and is coming up fast. Mark your calendars for Saturday, September 8th for the special community event hosted by the Austin Chamber of Commerce. Tickets for the 4th annual Lobster Fest are available at austinchamber.org. Finally, don't forget this. On the evening of Friday, August 17th, we will be having a double header down at Engle Park that you won't want to miss. At 5:30 p.m., join Tasia Sabatino of Rebel Yoga Studio for a beachfront yoga class before DJ Catch One hits the Engle Park stage at 7 p.m. for a dance party. Get a taste of mind, body, spirit, Austin, and the summer concert series all in one. And guess what, folks? It's all free. my announcements. Any others?
We're good.
Okay, all right. Into those board resolutions. Let's go.
Okay. First, approval of minutes, regular meeting. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the July 24th, 2018 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Approval of minutes, special meeting. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the July 27th, 2018 minutes of the special meeting as presented.
Motion?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I'm going to go back and forth. Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, approval of voucher detail report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated August 7th, 2018 in the amount of $389,813.91.
So moved.
Second.
Did you?
Discussion?
Did you?
Do you have a discussion? No?
There's a lot of IMAs in there. Okay.
Yeah, one month.
Oy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, change to the meeting schedule, August 14th, 2018. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby cancels the regularly scheduled legislative session scheduled for Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we needed to cancel our meeting next week, which is why we have packed so much into our special meeting this week. We will again approve vouchers at a special meeting, which we will tack onto our work session for August 21st. Is that true? Okay.
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Finance audit, Town of Austining 2017. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining hereby acknowledges that in accordance with Section 35 of the General Municipal Law, the 2017 audit of the Town of Austining financial statements and supplementary information has been distributed to and reviewed by the Town Board, and said report shall be filed with the Office of the Town Clerk.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So thanks again go out to our finance department for all the work they do getting ready for our audit, especially to Dale Ferreira, Deputy Comptroller, and Tom Warren, Town Comptroller, and I will also say to our Budget Director, Maddie Zahaj. We are pleased to have a clean audit in 2017. Thanks also to our auditors, PKF, O'Connor, Davies, for all their work. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay. Transportation alternatives programs. Whereas the town of Austining has adopted the Millwood Austining Go Trail Plan, which identifies several bike and pedestrian routes to connect downtown Austining to the North County Trailway in Millwood. And whereas one of these routes follows New York State Route 133 from New York State Route 9 to New York State Route 100, a portion of which is located within the town's jurisdiction, and the town has committed to implementing the recommendations of the Millwood Austining Go Plan when improvements become feasible. And whereas the New York State Department of Transportation completed a feasibility evaluation recommending certain roadway improvements to make the New York State Route 133 corridor bike and pedestrian friendly, indicating that this portion of the Millwood Austining Go Trail Plan is feasible to implement. And whereas funding is available through the Transportation Alternatives Program to support projects for planning, design, and construction of facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and non-motorized transportation users. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining hereby endorses an application being submitted by the Supervisor's Office with the Town of Austining as the sponsor, in partnership with the Town of Newcastle, to design and implement a bike lane on New York State Route 133 from New York State Route 9A to New York State Route 100 as recommended by the Millwood Austining Go Trail Plan. Be it further resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austining commits its share of matching funds to this project as required of the towns of Austining and Newcastle by the Transportation Alternative Program.
Motion.
So moved.
Okay, so we have been working hard for a couple of years now to find ways to both improve our roads for cyclists and pedestrians and to make them safer for vehicles as well. The MOGO plan recently adopted by our board includes a feasibility study completed by the New York State Department of Transportation with recommendations for improving Route 133, considered the Cadillac route, since it is the most direct connection between downtown Austining and Millwood and the North County Trailway, also called the Empire State Trail soon. One of the options, Concept 2, would include engineering the road to improve it so that we could add striped bike lanes on both sides. The TAP grant comes along once every 2 years, at the most. If we can get Newcastle's buy-in, which we are hoping we can, and we will know better on Friday, we believe we would have a solidly competitive grant application to submit for the section of the road that would connect Route 100 to Route 9A, essentially to the village boundary. Once you get to the village, improvements get a little trickier, but we're hopeful that if we get this grant, we could use it to secure additional state or federal monies designated for bike lanes and other road safety features that include access for bicycles and pedestrians. And actually, we had a meeting recently with Westchester County legislator Catherine Borgia to discuss the possibility of the county maybe sponsoring it so that we could potentially get this as a TIP or a transportation improvement program, part of NIMTIC. We specifically asked for some suggestions if we should apply for this particular grant, even if we were hoping to get this developed into a TIP, because we believe it has the potential to be sort of a pilot program for these east-west connectors to the Empire State Trail, which is something that the governor is very in favor of. The idea of making more connections to the Empire State Trail. So this is a 20% match component. We're allowed to utilize CHIPS funds, as well as any other grant sources, as well as in-kind work that we would do, which we are going to continue to pursue, but ultimately this would be a win-win for all those who live along and utilize Route 133.
What's the number of our match, or estimated?
Estimated number at this moment in time, we just are recently crunching the numbers, and it looks like both Newcastle and Austin would have to come up with about $330,000 for the match, because it would be about $3.3 million improvement. So the grant that we would be seeking would be for $3.3 million, of which we'd have to come up with about $330,000. I think, even though it sounds like an awful lot of money, I just want to remind everybody, go back in time, this whole program, how we got here, stemmed from a resident on 133 who complained about the fact that the DOT said that they would never be interested in improving 133 because it was like one of the lowest routes on the totem pole, essentially. And he was saying, it's not pedestrian friendly, it's not bike friendly. I live on this block, and how can we get people to slow down? And how can we get people, to make this more of a route that would be safe for people?
So does this
walking
slow
and
the traffic
biking?
down?
Absolutely. Bike lanes absolutely slow traffic down and make it safer for bikes and for walking and everything else. So, and it would, essentially be a road widening effort. So that would be helpful for all of the.
So the DOT thinks they can widen the road from 100 to 9A without challenges.
There's always challenges, but
I think it's doable.
Yes, in fact, I think challenges is even built into the grant language. But yes, it absolutely is doable. That was part of the feasibility study that they produced. Correct. Okay. Yes, and there were three concepts. One of them actually has the bike lanes on both sides. The bike lane on one side of the road, and the other has on both sides of the road. So
do we still have time to decide which one of those concepts we do, or this is just for the engineering?
This is for the concept of having the bike lanes on either side of the road. That's what we're at. That's what we think is the most compromisable of the situations and the safest.
I just want to remind you that the alternative where it would be on one side of the road, it would be a completely separate from the roadway. There would be a grass buffer, and so part of the concern is that there's maintenance that would be on the town's part in terms of snow removal and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot more efficient to have it on the roadway and not have it separated.
So then it's more of a painted.
It's a painted line, right? Yeah. It's a solid line versus just in the road.
Yeah.
That. All those in favor? Oh, we already read the resolution.
Yeah, we did.
Opposed? Fantastic.
Okay. Resolution authorizing the supervisors to sign memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester for Community Choice Aggregation Program. Whereas the town board previously adopted a local law authorizing the town to participate in a community choice aggregation pilot program, which is intended to provide residential and small non-residential customers with the ability to lower their overall energy costs, and the benefits of the CCA program include price stability for fixed contract term, lower prices, more favorable contract terms, and the ability to design a program that reflects local preferences and needs, including a preference for cleaner power sources. And whereas in 2016, the town supervisor executed a memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester, a not-for-profit organization comprised of over 40 municipalities in Westchester County, including the town, for Sustainable Westchester to serve as program manager for the CCA program. Whereas in 2016, the town supervisor executed an electric service agreement with Con Edison Solutions to provide power supply to Ossining residents in accordance with the CCA program. And whereas for municipalities in the territory served by Con Edison, including the town, the CCA pilot program will conclude on December 31st, 2018. And whereas the town desires to continue to participate in the CCA program, recognizing the substantial benefits it has to the town and its constituents, and to have Sustainable Westchester continue to serve as the program manager for the CCA program to solicit bids and perform such other services as may be reasonably required to facilitate the implementation of the CCA program. And whereas Sustainable Westchester circulated an updated and revised memorandum of understanding to be executed by the more than 20 municipalities participating in the CCA program, which is similar to the 2016 MOU, and identifies the maximum price for a bid for residential accounts and small commercial accounts to be considered a compliant bid. And now therefore be it resolved, the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor to execute the memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester, subject to approval of council to the town as to form.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there any further discussion based on our conversation with Sustainable Westchester? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
So the next two resolutions are quite lengthy. I had suggested possibly not reading the entire thing, but it's obviously up to the supervisor if you're amenable to that.
I am amenable.
I think we're all agreeable to that.
What I tried to do is it's available on the website. It was published. It was in the email blast, and we're going to read the substance of all of the be it resolved clauses, and just a spattering of the whereas clauses to give a little bit of background for the listeners out there. But if anyone wants to read the whole thing, it is available in its entirety.
Sounds like a fantastic plan.
Okay. First, resolution regarding the content of air emissions regulations to be developed by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation affecting natural gas infrastructure facilities. Whereas the town board of the town of Ossining has a principal responsibility to protect the health and safety of its residents, businesses, and institutions, and whereas the people and environment of New York have been increasingly subjected to a build-out of natural gas infrastructure, including but not limited to pipelines and distribution networks, compressor stations, power plants, combustion heating systems, metering and regulation stations, and picking stations, and skipping a bunch to the end. Whereas the DEC has announced that it intends to rewrite or revise oil and gas regulations, which can be more stringent than federal requirements, therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining, in the interest of protecting its residents, businesses, and institutions, strongly urges the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, to adopt the following regulatory requirements. 1. Installation and use of lowest achievable emissions rate technology at all new and existing gas infrastructure facilities that emit pollutants into the environment, including those not designated under federal Title V requirements or not located within non-attainment areas. 2. Inclusion of non-combustion emission sources and emission sources currently considered exempt within the DEC regulatory framework. And 3. Installation and use of specific emission control technology identified through the federal National Gas Star program and elsewhere, including but not limited to a very long list of stuff. Number 4, implementation of practices identified through the National Gas Star program and elsewhere to reduce natural gas leakage and blowdowns, including but not limited to maintaining compressors at pipeline pressure, redirecting blowdown gas to lower pressure lines, cap testing, use of inert gases at picking stations, and more aggressive maintenance of packing rings and compressor rods than required by existing regulations. And 5, installation and use of air monitoring equipment at the SAC fence line and within nearby communities to provide continuous monitoring of pollutants, including toxic chemicals, criteria pollutants, ultrafine particulate matter, individual VOCs, as well as methane in real time for all gas infrastructure facilities, with such data made readily available to the public, such as by online access. And 6, On-site verification of compliance with regulatory requirements and permit conditions by independent registered inspectors through scheduled and random visits. And 7, rigorous quarterly inspection by independent registered personnel with regular reports submitted to the DEC and made available to the public to detect and ensure timely elimination of natural gas leaks at gas infrastructure facilities using the comprehensive detection methods such as aerial and ground level laser methane assessment, organic vapor analyzers, toxic vapor analyzers, sorbent tubes, SUMA canisters, infrared cameras, as well as real-time monitoring with Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy and other remote sensing along pipelines. And 8, 48-hour or greater advance notification to any village trustee / town board / city council / county legislator requesting it of all planned blowdowns regardless of size and other chemical releases, notifications within 30 minutes of all unplanned blowdowns regardless of size and other chemical releases at all gas infrastructure facilities, and suspension of planned blowdowns or other chemical releases when weather conditions would increase exposure to air pollutants. And 9, timely replacement or retrofit of technology and update of site practices for existing gas infrastructure facilities to ensure compliance with current regulatory requirements and best management practices. And 10, chain of custody records and tracking for all industrial waste removed from gas infrastructure facilities. And 11, strict enforcement of all best management practices and protocols for gas infrastructure facilities to ensure protection of public health, safety, and the environment. And be it further resolved that the DEC, in cooperation with the New York State Department of Health, should promulgate more stringent performance requirements, including but not limited to the regulated levels of criteria pollutants to address deficiencies in NAAQs, which fail to consider human toxicity in populations proximate to gas infrastructure facilities, and other deficiencies affecting public health, safety, or environmental protection. And be it further resolved that the DOH, in cooperation with the DEC, should require and oversee a comprehensive independent health impact assessment as outlined by the Centers for Disease Control and the National Academy of Sciences, incorporating the latest peer-reviewed science to be conducted by an independent public health entity and include cumulative short and long-term direct and indirect impacts from all natural gas infrastructure components, emissions from operations including blowdowns, leaks, and spills, and a thorough analysis of the chemical emissions and radioactive contaminants, as well as their concentrations, persistence, and dispersion, and that a health registry should be established and maintained with all data available to the public. And be it further resolved that the DEC should develop a state environmental quality review guidance to ensure that state agencies adequately address all cumulative impacts, including but not limited to greenhouse gases and climate change during environmental reviews for gas infrastructure projects. And be it further resolved that the town clerk shall forward this resolution to the Governor of New York State, Commissioner of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Commissioner of the New York State Department of Health, and the local state assembly member and state senator.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That was wonderful.
We didn't get a
I
measure.
didn't get a motion.
Yeah,
No.
we didn't do a motion.
Sorry.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Same comment as for the last one, although this one is already shorter to begin with.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Resolution in opposition to proposed plans for coastal storm risk management without sufficient study or community participation. Whereas from July 9th through July 11th, 2018, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers held public meetings for the first and only time regarding its coastal storm risk management study for the New York Harbor and Hudson Valley. And whereas 4 of the Army Corps of Engineers proposed alternative plans, 2, 3A, 3B, and 4, involve major and inner harbor barriers that almost entirely block either the Hudson River or major New York Harbor tributaries during storm events and would alter river and tributary flow patterns at all times. And whereas 2 of the Army Corps of Engineers alternative proposed barriers, 2 and 3A, that would entirely close off the harbor and river from the Atlantic during storm events and would alter river and tributary flow patterns at all times. And whereas proposed alternative 5, described as perimeter only and relying entirely on shoreline-based floodwalls and levees, is the only scenario presented so far that may protect low-lying communities from storm surges from storm surge from storms like Irene, Lee, and Sandy, while leaving our rivers to continue to flow naturally. And whereas the public comment period has been set for only 5 weeks during peak summer vacation times, when many residents are away and not easily informed about this major set of proposals, and whereas Scenic Hudson, Riverkeeper, and many others have voiced their concern and opposition to storm risk management approaches that could severely compromise the health of the Hudson River and its tributaries, and whereas the town of Ossining is a riverfront town that repeatedly acknowledges the importance of the Hudson River to our community, including the views, passive recreational uses, active boating uses, and view corridors enjoyed by thousands. And be it resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining does hereby register its strongest possible opposition to proposed plans 2 and 3A and ask that they remove from further consideration. And be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining does hereby register its support for further studies to ensure that shoreline-based measures, such as Alternative 5, described as perimeter only, would in fact protect New York Harbor and the Hudson Valley from flooding, and be it further resolved that further planning to manage the risk of coastal storm damage takes into account the impact of climate change and its impact on sea level rise, and be it further resolved that the public comment period be extended to 90 days to allow for full public understanding and response to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers proposals, and be it further resolved that this resolution be distributed to Nancy J. Brighton, Chief Watershed Section, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, it's a typo?
Yeah.
Okay. Congresswoman Nita Lowey, Governor Cuomo, Secretary of State Rosanna Rosado, New York State Senator David Carlucci, and Assemblywoman Sandy Califf.
Do I have a motion? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. With that friendly amendment of corrected spelling.
Yes. Okay.
Next up.
Next, we have monthly reports. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby accepts the following reports for the month of 2018: town clerk's office, town supervisor's office, town tax receiver's office, town building department.
Moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And finally, can I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for personnel, contracts, and advice of counsel? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so thank you for all that. And as a reminder, we will not be meeting next week. We hope to see everyone back here at 16 Croton Avenue on August 21st. Between now and then, please stay cool by limiting your time outside, and limiting your exertion to just coming to our outdoor concerts and relaxing. Have a great couple of weeks, and we will see you soon. Good night.
Okay.